All right, what's up, Dragon Brood? We're getting into day 2 of Thunder Junction previews, so let's get to it. Bonnie Pal Clearcutter. It is a 3 colorless green, blue, blue, so 6 mana for a 6/5 giant scout, which is awesome because there's a giant ox behind them. Legendary creature with reach, and it says when this card enters the battlefield, create Bow, a legendary blue ox, which I guess is in the picture. Create a blue ox creature token with this creature's power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control. Whenever you attack, you draw a card, then you may put a land from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield. All right, so there's a lot going on here. For 6 mana, you get a 6/5 with reach. Comes on the battlefield, you get possibly a 6/6 ox, assuming you play this on turn 6. Maybe it's a 5/5, either way. So you get, we'll assume, somewhere between 10 and 12 power for 6 mana. And then when you attack, you get to draw a card, and then if there's a land in your graveyard or in your hand, you get to put it onto the battlefield. This seems solid. Like, I don't know how often attacking with it's going to be super beneficial, because, like, at that stage, if you're attacking, you're probably winning. If not, it's probably on defense, so I don't really know. But you do have that big ox alongside it, so you could just save the ox to block with. But also, if your opponent were to sweep the board, this is a pretty quick way to recover, right? 10 plus power for 6 mana is pretty strong. And they're not attached to each other, so one could die and the other can stay into play. All around, kind of a cool card. Next up, we have Aloe Alchemist. Colorless and a green for a 3/2 with trample. When it becomes plotted, target creature gains +3/+2 and gains trample till end of turn. If you're playing something that wants plants or warlocks, this might be doable. It's a 3/2 with trample for 2, which isn't bad. You could plot to get, like, the problem is you have to plot as a sorcery. So, like, even if you put this on a creature, like, your opponent knows it has +3/+2 in trample. But if all they have is small things, sometimes trampling could be enough with that extra +3. So who knows? It's an interesting card, if nothing else. I just don't know if it's better than a lot of the stuff we've gotten in mono green recently, especially like Sharp-Eyed Rookie and stuff like that. All right, next up, Thunder Lasso. 2 colorless and a white for an equipment, which equips for 2 colorless. When it enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control, so it just comes into play and equips. It gets +1/+1, and then whenever the creature attacks, tap target creature defending player controls. That's kind of a cool way to do a lasso, right? You wrap up a creature whenever you attack so they can't block you. I mean, it's neat. This is going to be pretty good in limited. I don't think it has any room in constructed. Like, it's 3 mana is a lot for that. It does give it a +1/+1 and can basically keep a blocker from ever doing anything, but yeah, that's probably too steep for what creature decks are going to want. Outcaster Green Blade. I kind of like this aesthetic of these green things with, like, the leathered and hard-shelled hides and stuff. That's kind of cool. But anyway, Outcaster Green Blade. It's 2 colorless and a green for a 1/2 human mercenary. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for a basic land or desert, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. It gets +1/+1 for each desert you control. I mean, until we see the rest of the set, this card's viability is pretty much based on how common are deserts, how likely are they to be played, probably do any of them come into play untapped, like a lot of questions. If deserts are a thing, between this and the worm we saw yesterday, it's possible that this could be a thing, but otherwise, I mean, probably not going to be that impressive compared to a lot of other things. Right, we have Recu of Many paths, a green, a blue, and a red for a 3/3 human wizard legendary creature. Whenever you cast a modal spell, and that means anything where you get multiple choices, choose up to X, where X is the number of times you've chose a mode for that spell. All right, so if you chose one thing, you'll get to choose one of these. If you chose 2 things, you get to choose 2 of these, and so on. Your choices are: you can exile the top card of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play it. Put a +1/+1 counter on Recu. It gains trample until end of turn. Create a 1/1 blue bird creature token with flying. I mean, stat-wise, it's a 3/3 for 3 with a lot of upside. If you're playing a lot of the, like, spree type spells, though there are other things that already exist, even in standard, that you could play. I don't know if enough of them exist in green, blue, and red to make it worth it, but maybe. It's interesting. I don't know. This is a tough one to evaluate. I would have to go back through and take my time looking at all the different modal spells that are available, because otherwise, I don't know if I could give a proper assessment of this. It's a neat card. Might be a really fun build around for something like Commander. Don't know if it's a thing we're going to want to play in Standard. Tomb Trawler, 2 colorless, 0/4, artifact Golem. Pay 2, put target card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library. Yeah, not that exciting. It's just an 0/4 artifact body. If you're playing the big butts deck that wants to deal damage with your toughness, this probably makes the cut, but otherwise probably not doing much. Fine Woods Armadillo, 4 green, so 6 mana for a 7/7 Armadillo, which is kind of cool in a Western theme set. It does have reach, it has ward 3, so it's hard to kill for that much mana. You can pay 1 and a green, discard this card, search your library for a basic land card, or desert, reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle, you gain 3 life. I'm probably playing it in limited because it's a big body late. It's quality early to help you, find all your lands. Can help you find deserts. If I'm playing the desert-based deck, maybe it makes the cut. However, green has a bunch of really good stuff at 5, 6, 7 mana these days, so it probably isn't something you're in a hurry to play. Passable just barely, but probably isn't going to see a lot of play outside of one specific deck. Unscrupulous Contractor, 2 colorless and a black for a 3/2. When it enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice a creature. When you do, target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. You can also plot it for 3. Yeah, it's a human, it's an assassin. I could see a few decks where this is viable. I mean, sacking a token, because there's a lot of things that make mercenaries, is doable. Draw 2, lose 2 is something we've seen on a lot of black cards. So nothing too crazy. It's just kind of an amalgamation of other things we've seen black cards do. All right, so this is Revolting Compatriots. 3 colorless and a black zombie rogue. When it enters the battlefield, if a creature died this turn, create a 2/2 blue and black zombie rogue creature token. And it has plot of 2 colorless and a black for 4/3. Like, this is fine. Like, if I'm playing a zombie themed deck, I'm fair. It's already a zombie rogue. It makes a zombie. There's ways you can sacrifice things to get the benefit off of this. The creature that you create isn't tapped or anything, so that's cool. I mean, it's plausible that this could be played. Likely, I don't know. In limited, it's probably pretty solid. For standard, probably won't see much play, if any. Bruce Tarl. I think we've only seen this previously, this character, on another commander card. But Bruce Tarl, Roving Rancher, 2 colorless, red, white. For a human warrior, legendary 4/3 creature. Oxen you control have double strike. That's awesome. We've already seen a couple things that make oxes. Whenever this card enters the battlefield or attacks, exile the top card of your library. If it's a land card, create a 2/2 white ox creature token. Otherwise, you may cast it until the end of your next turn. I kind of dig this, right? Like, there's a chance you're going to pay 4 mana and get 6 power worth of creatures, right? You get a 4/3 and a 2/2. Then if you attack, same thing, right? You get access to a land that's going to make you a 2/2. If it's a non-land, though, you get the option of just casting the spell. So this is kind of sweet. There's a few things I could see playing with this. Even the Pia deck we played recently, because you could play the card. Oh, I guess it doesn't exile the top card, though. Oh, it does. It says exile the top card of the library. So yeah, this could work in that type of deck. With that, Quintorius, it gives you a 4 mana card that deck didn't really have before. It can make you an extra body just because. So yeah, lots of cool stuff going on with this card. I kind of dig it. I will probably play this in something. I don't know what yet, but it'll probably make its way into a couple of decks. Stubborn Burrow Fiend, colorless and a green for a 2/2. Whenever it becomes saddled for the first time each turn, mill 2 cards. Then it gets +X/+X till end of turn, where X is the number of creatures in your graveyard. Saddle 2. Probably only digging this if you're playing a mount or saddle type deck. It is a Badger Beast mount, by the way. Because otherwise, I just don't think green decks really want this type of creature. It doesn't have trample, it doesn't have menace, it doesn't do anything else other than just be big and get chump blocked, and you have to commit 2 creatures to it. So in that regard, probably not something you're going to want to be playing in standard. Again, limited, probably standard. Once we see all the saddle and mount cards, and like maybe there's a home for this, but as it stands with what we know now, probably not. All right, this card also has a translation called Kell Joins Up. It's a green, a white, and a blue legendary enchantment. When Kell Joins Up enters the battlefield, you may exile a non-land card with mana value 3 or less from your hand. If you do, it becomes plotted. Whenever a legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Wow, okay. Yeah, okay, so the first part, it's whatever. It's fine. You can play it, you can go ahead and plot another card, which is cool because then you get to play it for free next turn. So it does have a big upside. But then if you're playing the thing with a bunch of legends, and we've seen a bunch of different legends decks that are viable in standard, everything just gets a +1/+1 for everyone that you play. That's, well, technically it has to enter the battlefield. So I guess if it's countered, you won't get the +1/+1. But yeah, this definitely going to find a spot for this. It even has upside in the sense that even if you get an extra one, you could plot something for free to just have aside for later, and then possibly get some cool trickery that way. So kind of a cool card. Cool card. I'm not a huge fan of the art, but you know, this art style is going to kick it for some people, so it's cool. This one is called Lively Durge, colorless and a black. It's a sorcery. It's a spree card, and again, an uncommon one only has 2 choices, as we've seen. So for 2 mana +1, you can search your library for a card, put it into your graveyard, then shuffle. Or cost +2, you can return up to 2 creature cards with total mana value 4 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Okay, now the second part is way more interesting than the first part. However, for 5 mana, you do these in order, so you put something in your graveyard, and then you could get 2 things back. Mana value 4 or less from your graveyard. So it could be 2 2/2s, it could be 1 big 4 mana thing, it could be a 3 and a 1. This card has potential. It's a little kind of unassuming, but it's kind of cool. It's a reanimator card for only 4 mana, but it does only get something 4 or less, but also has a lot of upside, even for just 5 mana. So I'm into this. This is cool. I think what I like about it compared to other reanimator cards is that you can almost always make sure you have a target, right? Even if they exiled your graveyard, cool, you can pay 5 mana, search for the thing you want, put it in there, then get it into play. Not something you really have the access to many times. So it's kind of a cool design on this. Right, Langhorn Sharpshooter, 2 colorless and a red for a 3/3 Minotaur Rogue with reach. When it becomes plotted, it deals 2 damage to any target. You can plot it for 3 colorless and a red. I mean, that's cool. I mean, it cost 1 more than it costs to cast it, which is tough, to shoot something for 2. But then you get the card for free the next turn, so I guess it's fine. You paid a 1 mana premium to play a sorcery speed shock, effectively. But otherwise, you play it on time and on rate. It's a 3 mana 3/3 with reach. I mean, it's fine. It's playable. I guess that's the most I could say about it. Marchesa, Dealer of Death, a blue, a black, and a red. Human Rogue, 3/4 legendary. Whenever you commit a crime, you may pay... Oh, I just realized maybe each of the wedges, 3-color wedges, has a legendary creature. But anyway, whenever you commit a crime, you may pay 1. If you do, look at the top 2 cards of your library. Put one of them in your hand and the other into your graveyard. Yeah, this is just fine. If you have a crime-based deck, something that's dealing damage to your opponent's stuff, targeting your opponent's stuff, you get the option of just getting extra cards in your hand, so bonus draws. Like, yeah, quality card. Weird that it's not an assassin, because I think the first Marchesa was an assassin. But otherwise, yeah, fine card. Even Interruptor, colorless, white, for a 2/2 bird rogue with flash and flying. That's a lot for 3 mana. Whenever it enters the battlefield, exile target spell. It becomes plotted. Oh, interesting. So you can maybe save something from being countered, or... Alright, here's some cool stuff going on here. And then it also has spells your opponents cast from graveyards or from exile cost 2 more to cast. So you can also slow down other people's plotted cards. Yeah, this is kind of a cool thing. Like, this is a card that's really going to depend, at least in standard, on kind of which way the various meta trends go. But if so, this has a real spot. In older formats, though, there are things that want to play stuff out of graveyards or exile stuff and combo off. Like, this can interrupt those as well. So this is going to be a pretty interesting card to follow to see when and where it gets played. Servant of the Stinger, colorless and a black for a 1/3 human warlock with death touch. Whenever Servant of the Stinger deals combat damage to a player, if you committed a crime this turn, you may sacrifice this card. If you do, search your library for a card, put it in your hand, then shuffle. I don't know about this one. It's a 1/3 death touch. Your opponent probably doesn't want to block it, so there's a good chance you're going to connect. If you target something, then you would be able to use this to search for a card. There's probably some use here. I don't know if I'm excited about it right off the bat, but it is a human, it is a warlock. Those are things that are probably going to matter. So yeah, it's fine. This is a no one. I think it's playable. You probably have to work for it a little bit, but the upside is actually fairly high, I'd imagine. Okay, there's a lot going on here, a lot of text. This is Roxanne Starfall Savant. 3 color. This is probably from the last unset, is what it looks like based on the artwork. 3 colorless, red green. So it's a 5 mana, 4/3 legendary cat druid. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, create a tapped colorless artifact token named Meteorite. With when Meteorite enters the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to any target and can tap to add 1 mana of any color. When you tap an artifact token for mana, add 1 mana of any type that artifact token produced. Wow. All right. So I think this would also double the mana on your treasures, which is cool. It doesn't come into play tapped, right? Token. Oh, create a tapped color. So it is tapped. But coming into play, you get a 4/3 and you get to deal 2 damage to anything. So it could be player or creature. Then the following turns, you just ramped your mana up double. So yeah, there's a lot going on with this card. Like, this feels playable. You know, if you have something that cares about artifacts, that's a thing. If you're just being aggressive, it finds a way to deal more damage. If you need to ramp up to more mana, it does a thing. It is 5 mana for 4/3. So that's the part that's a little unexciting, but it does a lot of things, so that's totally reasonable. So yeah, this will be a fun one to build with, I think. So this one is Archangel of Tides. Colorless, white, white, white. For a 3/5 flying angel, so 4 mana there. As long as it's untapped, creatures can't attack you or planeswalkers you control unless their controller pays 1 for each of those. As long as it's attacking, creatures can't block unless their controller pays 1 for each of those creatures. Wow, this is interesting. Like, you can create situations where if your opponent's down to 1 or no mana, like, you can attack and basically have a bunch of unblockable attackers. Like, that's pretty good. But also, your opponent can't really afford to, like, cast things and attack you. So it slows them down. Like, this card's a nuisance in a lot of ways. Obviously, it dies to regular spot kill removal or whatever. But yeah, this is a pretty strong card. I would expect this is going to be one that, hell, even in Commander, I mean, this is a thing that could be a nuisance for a while. Probably going to sell for $15, $20 all day, I bet. We have Step Between Worlds. 3 colorless, blue, blue. It's a sorcery. Each player can shuffle their hand and graveyard in their library. Each player who does draws 7. Exile Step Between Worlds. You can plot it for 4 colorless, blue, blue. We have variations of this all throughout Magic. It's some combination of players shuffle their hands in, draw 7. It's cool. I mean, the one thing I will say about this that makes this better than some of the other ones is that usually when you do that with the other cards, your opponent kind of gets to play their cards first, right? You get the new hand and you're tapped out. Your opponent gets a fresh hand, do whatever they want. In this case, because you can plot it or plot it using some other cards, then when it goes off, you're getting a new 7 with all your mana still up. And that could be the difference on this type of card. So we'll see. I don't know how to rate this one. It's going to be tough, but the decks that want it will probably be trying to combo off, I imagine. Congregation Griff, colorless, green-white, 1/4, Hippogriff Mount. Has flying and lifelink. Whenever it attacks, while it's saddled, it gets +X/+X, where X is the number of mounts you control. Saddle of 3, though, so that's the highest saddle cost we've seen so far. Yeah, this one's fine. You know, you saddle it up, you attack. If you are playing a mount-based deck, this is fine. It gets a big bonus. Yeah, this just feels like if you are playing mounts, this is going to be one of the key cards in that type of deck. At Knife Point, colorless, black, red, enchantment. As long as it's your turn, outlaws you control have first strike. Whenever you commit a crime, create a 1/1 red mercenary, blah, blah, blah. Ability only triggers once each turn. So each time you target something, you have to make a 1/1, and on your turn, outlaws have first strike. Yeah, this seems fine. If you're playing a deck based around any of those creature types, this is obviously a decent card to have. Not really much else to say about it. Okay, Arid Archway. This is a desert. It does come into play tapped. So far, all the deserts we've talked about have come into play tapped. When it enters the battlefield, return a land you control to its owner's hand. If another desert was returned this way, you get to surveil 1. And it taps for 2 colorless. So there is a reason this comes into play tapped. Wow, okay, there's a lot going on here because you could also, like, keep playing Arid Archways to keep surveilling every other turn, or every turn, I guess, if you wanted to. They do tap for 2 mana, so that's kind of nice. So you kind of still don't fall too far behind by playing this. You could also play this tapped on turn 1 and then just play some 3 mana thing on turn 2. Oh no, it says when it enters the battlefield, you return a land. So you have to return a land. You can't really do that then. Yeah, you can't put this into play till at least turn 2. Alright. It's interesting, though. It is another desert. Like I said, it does have an ability. So we'll see how many of these deserts we get in this set. All right, so we went through a lot of previews today. A lot of cool stuff. But I will tell you, there were some really big things that got previewed on day one. So if you didn't know all that or see all that, check out the other video where I covered it all for you. But that's all I have for you for now. We'll see you next time.